This is the Reverend Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Dios lo bendiga. Este es Reverendo Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Welcoming you to another broadcast. At this hour, we have our bilingual broadcast, our teaching in English and Spanish. So we ask that you be patient as we translate live on the fly between languages. Esta es la hora que damos la enseñanza en inglés y español y pedimos que tengas pues paciencia mientras que traduzcamos de un idioma al otro. Aproveche y aprende el otro idioma. While we're at it, you can learn the other language as well. Es un beneficio de sintonizarse con nuestro ministerio. It's a benefit, an added benefit, I should add, of tuning in to our ministry. Hello and welcome. God bless you all today. Today we have a wonderful ending to our broadcast season for 2025. As you know, we've been in our AI series for some time, and today we will end this season, although we won't do the ending for the AI examinations. We will always do them every once in a while, even throughout our sabbatical now in the winter. And it's probably going to be a regular series as AI becomes really a mainstay in our societal development. So what we're going to do today, though, is very interesting for those people who have capacity to appreciate the stuff that I do. Today we're going to look at Torah, and we're going to have the AI analyze Torah, at least parts of it, and throughout its access to online sources, and to see if it fits as a primary basic teaching. In other words, was it in fact a basic teaching? And what do I mean by basic? Meaning that that Torah was purposed as a basic foundational teaching from, obviously, if it's the basic, that implies that there's more, right? That's not the end of it, simply that was the beginning of it. So again, that has ramifications, obviously, for in many ways. But we want to just show how the AI handles this topic. In addition to that, before we do that, we have to frame the discussion so that the AI is premised correctly. And what do I mean by that? As I've always said, if we're going to use AI credibly, we have to give it a credible basis. And that credible basis is math. It's mathematics. Once we frame the AI into a thinking pattern with math involved, then you have the basis to ask questions and have a better math related. Doesn't have to be a math result, but at least that the thinking has already, we've introduced math into the thinking, into the framework, and then we have made the AI to think within those mathematical relationships to make a better correlation of facts or information that it gathers together and puts together. So that's what we're going to do first. So and what I'm teaching you as well is not just these biblical concepts, but what we're teaching also is how to use AI more appropriately, to more beneficially, so that you can get the most out of it for your research and for the things that you're pondering. And this question of what is the truth, how do we know what the truth is? With a tool like AI, the AI will help immensely to help establish the things that need to be established. From time to time, I'm going to pause because we have the younger children here today with us, and sometimes they need reminding of the manners that we are expecting during a live broadcast. So you'll forgive me for that, but again, children are children. Right? Now for the adults in the house. Let's start by pulling up the AI. Again, we're using a Copilot. Copilot is utilizing, as I can see here, Copilot is utilizing Chat GPT. This is just for background information so that we all know. Also, as well, we have the issue that we're not able to broadcast easily where we are located. So I'm going to look more into that during our break and see if I can get a higher bandwidth through the service that we do have. So I'm going to look into that. However, at this rate, we're having off and on, so you'll get interruptions in the broadcast. If they're too severe, I will re-upload to our YouTube channel. YouTube channel is TSPCI for those who are not familiar with it, TSPCI. And so if I find that the recording there is too interrupted or too choppy, then I will simply re-upload the video. I did not do it for last week, but I will do it during the break. I'll just make sure that they're good. We're always recording here, so we always have an uninterrupted, unhindered copy. All right, I think that's it for housekeeping as well. Some people have been asking, what is this? Well, this, if you point your phone here, you can make a donation to the ministry. Our ministry, and you can go to tspci.org to read about the projects we're doing. That will also get an update during the break, so that you can see everything up to date of what we're working on. And we thank you in advance for any consideration. Alrighty, let's go to our screen and let's begin to work on our if this changed, I guess we'll begin to work out on our project here. I'm looking for what's our screen, not there. One moment, I'll make a fix on this. This is Church Broadcast TSPCI. All right. One moment, let me fix all this up. One moment. We had changed it a while during the week for something else. So probably last week we did that, and we neglected to reincorporate it. Okay, let's get to our AI window here again as we. It's readable. The first thing we're going to do is work. This is the issue. Even when I have to prepare, as you just know, I had to prepare these things for you. It's the whole concept here is that how do you think that the human will to get the full truth, handle it, thinking. And we're dealing again with religion that, ready for the full gambit of truth from the God who created the heavens and the earth. People, scientists, learning. How do you think that 4,000 years ago, man was ready to get the full Monty from God? How do you come to that thinking? I mean, there's things that you as an individual still today, you don't understand. But you're going to believe that God 4,000 years ago revealed the whole truth to people, because it doesn't matter which people. We're not here looking at certain groups of people and saying, how could they get all the truth and understand? That's not the issue. It's all of man. How is it that all of man would be able to grasp the whole truth 4,000 years ago? And I say that because this has a lot to do with people who believe that, we're supposed to be following
Torah. We're supposed to be living according to God's instructions in Torah. This idea, which comes from what the Bible says. Obviously, I'm not saying, it's an idea that they came up with. God says to do this and follow this, but again, he's talking to people who were alive 4,000 years ago plus. And again, still the same question is to be asked. Why are we thinking, or how can you think or reason that God gave them the full Monty? And by that I mean the whole truth and nothing but the truth 4,000 years ago, that the form, we're not saying that it isn't truth. What we're saying is the form. In what form did God deliver truth to the people that were alive 4,000 plus years ago? Because it's interesting that people today are thinking or reasoning that what God told them 4,000 years ago, exactly the way he said it and the exact things he said to do, that the thinking is that is all that needs to be done today. Because this is not a question of that God is eternal or not. That's not the issue. It is also not the question if his instruction or what he's teaching isn't an eternal truth. The issue is, was it purposed? Was it purposed that we take it and handle it as an eternal truth? And obviously the issue is it an instruction that has to be an instruction? See, there's purposes. The problem here is that understanding that when something is in an instruction, then it becomes part of a process. It's not an end. Instructions are part of a process of learning, of development. So the thinking that the instruction is still the aim is there's no basis for that in our reasoning within the construct of what instruction is supposed to be. The name Torah, the word Torah means to instruct. So obviously somebody had the idea that this was instruction. When God gave it, these were instructions. But automatically when you say instruction, the concept of instruction inherently includes the concept of development, of learning. And when we're engaged in learning, then the instruction becomes a part of what started the learning process, but it is not the end to it. Okay, we had to have our first reprimand for today. Now, and this will stay here, see, so that when later on they grow up and realize how much of a pest they were as children, they can see this video and see the interruption they did to God's work. So now they don't have an excuse to blame God later in life. Alrighty, so here we go. So this is the thing, this is instruction, this is all part of it. But the instruction that I'm giving today shouldn't be instruction tomorrow and in the future, because you should have learned the lesson. See, that's the whole point. If you have learned the lesson, then the instruction is no longer needed. It's still there. It's like the truth. It's the truth. You shouldn't touch the fire. Duh. So that's always there, but do we need to continue to remind you every single day, now that you're an adult, that you shouldn't put your finger in fire? Is the truths that are basic. These are basic truths, and we need to move on to more future truths. So let's go in and see how the AI starts handling with this process. All right, and like I said, we gotta start the AI into the correct thinking framework, which is math. Let's always say math is math. And the other issue with this, as I've said before, God created all the sciences, all the things that we're studying. God created these things. The Bible says according to His Word. So that means that these things, the truth cannot violate what the facts are. It's simply that what God established in the universe cannot be against God's word, because God created all things according to His word, His will, His word. There's nothing in conflict with God when it comes to what is scientifically known. I'm not talking about theories. Hypotheses are exactly that, hypothesis. But the things that are known cannot contradict God's word. Now, if you find a contradiction, it is most a mistake that you are making, and it's possible that science still hasn't discovered a certain detail, but the core truths are pretty much established. So you really cannot, like say, ignore science, because, as like some people would like to say, well, the Bible is the only authority. The problem with that is, yes, God says, though, that He created the heavens and the earth according to His word, so that the science that we are doing today or any day, and the math that we are using, these are the things that are made according to God's word. So you can, again, if you are believing something that goes against known scientific fact, then you really have to check on the way you're interpreting the scripture. You need to be careful with that, because therefore science and mathematics are ways of discovering, of verifying, and of confirming God's word in His creation. That's all that is. So people, as children of God, simple as that. Science is good. It's not evil. It's not bad. Math is good. It's not bad. It's not evil. All right. So, and here you're going to see how everyone should be doing things, how everyone should be thinking. And the first thing is, like, you're trying to figure out how to do something or how to deal with issues in your life. Well, then you have to think about math, because people who do have a lot of problems, it's because you're not thinking right. You have many problems because you keep living life without thinking correctly. You just want to bump into the wall, and then you're always feeling a pain in the head. I don't know why. This is what happens with people who do this. Now the people who do this say, I don't know, I have this pain in my head, I'm always having a headache, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And what's happening is that, metaphorically, they're always walking into the wall. That's what's happening. That's why you suffer what you're suffering all the time. Continually, because you insist. You keep insisting on doing something the wrong way, or maybe everything. And so you live a life full of pain, full of suffering. And you say things like, nothing comes out right. Nothing turns out right for me. I have a miserable life. Well, the reason you have a miserable life is because you're not careful to go through to the wall. So people who insist on not caring about doing things the right way, these people will suffer. It's painful. Life to them is painful. It's complicated. Why do I have so many problems in my life? Because you keep running into a wall. When there's a door, all you have to do is be careful and go to the left or to the right a little further, and you can make it through the doorway. But no, you want to rush. You want things quick. You want to do it quickly until boom, bang, bang into the wall. And then you're wondering why you're in pain. You're wondering why you're suffering. You don't want to go to school. You don't want to study. You don't want to do your homework. Then later in life, you are full of pain and suffering. Wondering why going against me? Because you insisted on it. Instead of doing the right things when you had the chance. You insisted on it. Right? So that's it. You can't blame anyone, just yourself. Because that's what you chose. There's no reason in today's world, back when I was growing up, there was no internet. There was no YouTube. There was no YouTube at all. The only way to learn things was to take classes or go to the library and actually read a book. Today, you have information and access to information at the touch of a button. But instead of gaining education, what do most kids do? They want to play a game. Instead of gaining, learning how to read, they're just playing games or watching videos. They're not learning anything. So instead of the human race progressing forward, we're actually even worse than in the old days. They had no internet, but they read a book. They actually went to the library and they read books. They took books out of the library and they finished them. They read them. They consumed them. Now you have kids that take a book out of the library and they don't even read it. They don't even return it in time. So then comes the pain and suffering again, as I said, of now having to pay the late fees of a book that they know nothing about. They'll probably need to have children, and maybe those children maybe read a book, and then it'll be this. Oh, I had that book when I was a kid. I took it out of the library. And then the kid said, how did you like it? I never read it, the guy will have to say. I never read it. What ridiculousness, right? But that's the reality that's happening out there today. Rocket scientists, but most kids, by the time they're 20, they're still trying to figure out how to win in that video game. They're trying to beat that video game still. That's the reality of what's going on today. All right, so again, the basis. People need to solve their problems, and we need to help AI. For you to get the right answers, you need to give AI a framework and setting the AI to start thinking properly about the topic. We're not going to introduce the topic yet. We're going to talk about math to the AI, or differences of basic concepts to later concepts, right? To the evolution of concepts over time, of learning. Basically, to give a percentile, to grade the difference between the basic instruction to its educational outcome. So that's basically what we want to have it to identify. So it says let's examine, and again we have the to prove that I'm a human. Let's examine okay, let's make it easier, like first grade. Was it first grade? Let's say first grade education. So let's examine first grade education and set it as the base for calculation. And then let us examine, let's say, let's go all the way up, right? Because everyone fancies their religion as being top of the line. We know it. We have the truth. Everyone else is stupid, right? So let's examine let's say doctoral level studies. Okay? And then let us examine doctoral level studies. Let us compare each. Let us compare each by hypothetically taking elements of the first year classroom experience, and we'll make it and or let the AI choose, and or educational let's say educational parameters or educational philosophy, educational goals. Educational goals, first year experience, not educational elements. We put elements, make it 3. Educational elements and goals. And extrapolate You don't have to use these fancy words, but it will understand what I'm trying to say. And extrapolate a percentile or degree of evolutionary development of those basic elements and teaching in time. Okay? And that will be the question. So we will reread this, and I'll explain why I'm saying what I'm saying, why I'm asking. Let's examine first grade education and set it as the base for calculation. So I'm already putting it into a mathematical mindset. And then let us examine doctoral level studies. Let us compare each by hypothetically taking elements of the first year classroom experience and or educational elements, which means that it should look into things used in first grade, like educational aids, tools, which would include the illustrations on the wall and pictures that are used, or the big letters so you can learn how to write and stuff like that. All of those things, all those elements, and goals, and extrapolate a percentile or degree of evolutionary development, how it can develop or should develop over time, and towards, and I didn't put that in, teaching in time towards the doctoralization, towards doctoral realization, and just leave it like that, so that again it can understand that what we're trying to find is a percentile or mathematical calculus as to how much of a difference in development from a basic beginning to a doctoral finality. So that's the question, and we're sending it off. And let's see what the response is. Okay, it says great idea. Let's build a structured comparison between first grade education and doctoral level studies, treating the former as the base unit and extrapolating how those foundational elements evolve across time into the highest academic achievement. And now, what we're hoping for, that's what I'm hoping for, is that it provide a range, the full scope, that it gets it into its thinking process right now, because then we're going to apply it to our real question, what we really want to know, and then it has a basis for making that judgment. You see, so that's what we're doing. We're limiting it to consider now we're doing this so that we can help the AI focus on providing a structured and calculated response. Remember, the AI is just a fancy smancy calculator. The thinking that we're eliciting, or that pseudo thinking that we're trying to elicit, can be better situated closer to the truth because of the math. You understand? The math is the truth engine. That's the verifiable fact here, the mathematics. So that gives us our credibility, because this is basing it on adherence to mathematical principles. Okay, so that's is what's going to help out the whole situation. Okay, so let's go to what the other answer of the answer was. The framework for comparison. We'll take core elements of first grade education, classroom experience, goals, teaching methods, cognitive skills, social development, and trace their evolutionary trajectory toward doctoral studies. Then we'll assign a hypothetical percentile of development to show how far each element has advanced. Fantastic. This is beautiful how it's handling. Learning goals. There we go. So in its first element, we see knowledge acquisition. First grade, we have basic literacy. We have basic literacy, numeracy, and general awareness. All right? So that's the first grade goal, if you would like. And then in the doctoral studies level, we have specialized original contribution to global knowledge. And it gives it the evolutionary development of 95% advancement. So we take note that from the basic level to the doctoral level, it's a 95 here, but we won't say it yet. Okay? Now, the second area, critical thinking. And at the doctoral level, we have advanced theoretical reasoning and critique of existing paradigms. And it gives it a evolutionary percentile of development and progress of 90%. Okay, again, very significant number, but we won't explain this. We won't talk about this yet. Let's continue to the next area. Creativity. In the first grade, drawing, storytelling, and imaginative play. At the doctoral level, we have designing new frameworks, methodologies, or theories. And interestingly, it gives that an 85% advancement. That's why I say interesting, because remember, the doctor here, or the doctor in the candidate, is instead of drawing and telling stories, is now designing new frameworks and methodologies. So that's quite a big difference, right? We're not drawing a picture here. We're designing frameworks. And we're not storytelling, but we're creating or developing theories. Okay? So that's pretty much a very big difference there. Okay, so that gives it an 85% advancement. Now, why did I say there's a lot to talk about here? Because look at the 95%, that's significant. Right? And the fact that in science, you see, you have to remember your science. In science, that 5% there, that's really, really telling what happens there. The possibilities there, right? All your margin of error is there and all that. It's very significant. That's why I say these numbers are very telling. All right. Now we're going to teaching methods. Teaching methods. Instruction style in first grade is teacher-led, structured lessons. Okay? Now we have 8. So you have teacher-led structured lessons, but at the doctoral level, we have self-directed, mentor-guided research, right? That's what you have. You can already start making correlations. Those of you who are well prepared in biblical study, you can already start making some important correlations here. Evolutionary development is 80% advancement. 80%. Assessment. In first grade, we use to test. This is testing. How do we test learning? So at first grade level, you test learning with spelling tests, right? And math quizzes. Don't you love them? But then, at the doctoral level, we have peer-reviewed publications and dissertation defense. Dissertation is when you go to defend, you have to write a book, basically, a thesis, to become a doctor, to get that degree. So it's not ending your dissertation. Okay, so that's at that level. And peer review, that's what the scientists all have to deal with, and any doctor of any field would have to, will submit articles and have it peer reviewed, and that's the mainstay at the doctoral level. Again, of childhood, 95%. Okay, because there's a big difference between being tested for math and spelling a word than for being peer-reviewed and defending your dissertation, defending your thesis. That is a big difference, very big. Okay, so you start seeing the quality of difference between the first grade level, basic, and the doctoral level. How about collaboration? At first grade, you work on group projects, right? And play-based teamwork. At the doctoral level, you have international conferences, multidisciplinary research teams. Okay, so you're working together in groups for, big, as we say, big boy projects, right? They're not the basic group projects of, making a poster in a group or developing an experiment for science class as a team. And then the difference in the evolutionary progress is 90% advancement. Cognitive skills. In first grade, as the element is memory, in first grade, you're supposed to be memorizing facts. This is if those of you who don't know, in education, in pedagogy, in the study, the science of education, the basic way to learn. Basic. This is basic. This is the basic way for Frankenstein to learn. Okay, this is just basic stuff here. The most baby way of learning something is to memorize. Memorization involves repeating it and repeating it and repeating it over and over again. And that is the way first graders are really expected to learn anything. So it's repetition. They did it in class, dictionary. So they're giving you opportunities to memorize. When you walk into the classroom in the morning, the next day, so we see the words up on the board, right? These are our study words from yesterday. Oftentimes you see that the whole week you have like 5 words that everyone had to learn how to spell, what the meaning is, and all week long you see the same 5 words on the blackboard or green board or whiteboard. And so at the end of the week you'll be tested on these words. And as you go along in school, they use that same process. As you go along in school, that same process is used for bigger or larger concepts, right? You have to know these 5 theories by the end of the week. You'll be tested on these 5 theories, usually college level at that point. at the doctoral study level, you're not memorizing facts. Again, that's the basic level of learning. You're not really truly learning things until you get away from memorization. I don't want to go there where many medical doctors have to memorize a lot of things. We're not going to go there, okay? But synthesizing at a doctoral level, you should be synthesizing vast literature and recalling complex theories. So that's what's expected at the doctoral level. Now that is an 85% advancement, right? And it's likely because a lot of this has to be from things that you remember anyway. So what this is showing us is basically how the AI is reasoning here, how it's using the reasoning, because it's saying that, well, basically, if they're going to recalling is memory still. It's using your memory, but you're remembering or memorizing more complex things. The synthesis, though, is the thing that's not memorizing at all, right? That is synthesizing. And so it's that you're gathering different information. Same thing the AI is doing right now. Is really synthesizes, bringing things together into synchronicity and mulling it over and putting it together in different ways. So the synthesizing is the skill here, where the first grade, they're not synthesizing anything, and it's not promoted either. It's not encouraged, of course, because the first thing a little young mind has to do is learn things. Their head is empty, the brain is empty, and needs to learn new things so that later on, by the time they get up to this time in their lives, they are able to synthesize with it. Now, abstraction. Recognizing, first grade, recognizing shapes and numbers. It's a thing people can't even do as adults. Some have difficulty. But at the doctoral level, you are supposed to be able to model abstract systems. The whole conversation about God is in the abstract space. It's not concrete. It's abstract. So right there, all you atheists out there, you have to realize something. That the discussion, if there's a God or not, is a discussion that is really skilled, is the skill level that you need, is, atheists who don't have a doctoral level education or ability really should be, sitting down. You're not really, you shouldn't be trying to debate, because the whole issue, the questions, the difficulties that you are having, especially when you're dealing with a person like myself, is that you're unable to think abstractly with skill. And that's a problem, because the questions that you're asking are questions that are derived from your inability to think at this level. So we have to, what are we supposed to do? If you are unable to think at a certain level, how is that our fault? So at this level, you're supposed to be able to, that's when you can able to enter into the discussion, into the room, and the question if there is a God or there isn't. Okay, everything. If you're not at this level, then it's just silly talk. It's uneducated talk. And granted, there are theists who are also likewise uneducated to really get into an earnest discussion of this magnitude. So that is also true. Okay? But But most, because they will engage basically dumb questions that come from the atheist, as if it was proof that there's no God. You have a dumb question because you can't think abstractly and you think you have something there. Ignorance is not proof of anything. Okay, so that's basically what's happening in the atheist and theist debate. That's what's going on. It's really ignorance. They're fighting over ignorant things, the lack of capacity. Okay, well, anyway, should we go back to with an atheist to discuss recognizing shapes, to show them a shape? Do you know what this is? And this this is why I got my diagrams. I did the diagram, right? Have you seen the diagram? I make the sphere. This is everything. This is existence and reality. And then the sphere is in this large field. And I have to explain that the field goes on. It's not limited by the limited capacity of your TV screen. Okay? So, again, but it's the abstractness. See? Can you think? Okay, so this is the problem. All right, so again, the picture helps out a little bit, the graphics that I've made, but it does not replace the ability for the person to think abstractly, because it doesn't matter. Because they'll just look at it and say, well, that's a ball. They can't think. They just don't have the abstract thinking ability needed to think out of the box and to deal with this topic. Okay, so then we have metacognition. Let's go to the next one. Metacognition, for a first grader, is emerging awareness of how I learn. And some kids never understand that. How do you learn? Do you know? There's some adults that still don't know how they learn. How do you learn? So some adults are not aware of that. I knew a kid, it's unfortunate too, it's a young man who, I was trying to help, and, he insisted, we got to a point in our mentoring where he insisted, but that's not the way I was teaching him. He insisted that that's not the way to teach me. That's not the way to teach me. So he was insisting that the way I was teaching was wrong. So then again, what it assumes? It assumes that he knows more about teaching, right, than I do. But for you to know more about teaching, think about the thinking here. For you to know more about teaching than I do, you have to first know more about learning. And so the real complaint is not that I was not able to teach him the right way. It's that he is not knowing how to learn. That's the real truth. Because if you know how to learn, no one needs to teach you. Because you know how to learn. You know how to look for information, how to qualify information, good information from bad information. And then be able to learn from those things that you research and look into and analyze. Okay, so that's the real truth of the matter. And I say this because that person, it was like maybe within the year, was dead. So here he is, with an opportunity to learn from a guy like myself. And instead, he was fighting the teaching, thinking that he knew more about how he's supposed to learn, which is contradictory. Well, then why are you here? And what ends up happening? He gets killed because he did something stupid. Because usually stupid people do stupid things, like fight against the teacher who's trying to teach them something before they wind up dead. And that's a true story. And it goes right to the crux of the matter, because some people resist the truth. You fight against the truth because you feel it's so uncomfortable that you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to, hear it. But it could be the truth that could set you free and save your life, quite literally. As in that case of that young man, it would have, if he wouldn't have been such a hard-headed person. Okay, and that's sad. You see, I never forgot. This years ago. Never forgot it. All right, so this is important that people and children, but a lot of you adults have never learned how to learn. And that's why you never pass your math. You hate math because you never learn how to learn your math. You hate this and that subject. You hate to read because you never learned how to read those big words and what to do when you come across a word you don't understand. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to, and you need to then do what? Repeat, because you're still in first grade. And even if you're in sixth grade, you're still in first grade if you don't know to do this, because these are skills that you were supposed to learn in first grade. Even the AI is telling you that. This is first grade level. And here you are in second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, high school senior, and you still don't know how to learn. And dare I say it, in college? That's the ridiculousness of the situation out here. Okay. So then we have at the doctoral level full mastery. Remember that the doctoral level comes after your master's degree. What do you call it? A master's degree, right? And that's a master with a ER, not a UR. Okay, I said that facetiously. But a master's degree, only intelligent people caught that one, right? A master's degree means that you're a master at something in a field, okay? So then when you go on beyond that, you're supposed to show full mastery, okay, in self-regulation, reflection, and strategy. Full mastery. Okay? So that's where our doctors need to be at. Okay, but again, that is a 90%. Look at this graphic here. The chart, I should say. 90% advancement. Full mastery. Self-regulation. That's big. You don't need the rules anymore. You don't need them because you have full mastery of self-regulation. That's self what? Self-following the rules. Full mastery of it. What is right and not doing what is wrong. Full mastery of reflection. To be able to look at something and make judgments. Is this right or is this wrong? Full mastery. You don't need to refer to a book. You don't need to go back and look at the law. It's like at times when I was debating for some against the the legalistic mindset. Out an example like saying, well, when you drive your car down the road, you have to obey the law. You're following the law, aren't you? Because they're trying to defend, that we all have to follow Torah, the laws of God, and in Torah. And they do that like that. I say, do you actually go down the street driving your car with the laws of the traffic laws pinned up on your windshield or on your steering wheel to remind you of what the law is? Because I don't live that way. I don't drive that way. I don't live that way. And it's funny thing, when I'm driving on a road where there's no speed limit, people don't notice this, but there are roads that have, for a while, don't have a speed limit. And when I finally get to a sign that has the speed limit posted, and I look at my speedometer, I'm at the speed limit. Now, why does that happen to me? Because I know a lot of you out there, you got to stop stepping on the brakes. Why does that happen? I can tell a speed limit even when the sign isn't posted. Because speed limit, there's a certain, there's a science to the speed limits. There's a reason that speed limits are posted, and the type or the level of the speed limit in certain scenarios. There's a reason for that. But if you're an intelligent person, you don't need the speed limit sign. Because when you are in a situation, like you're driving down a city street, for example, and you got parked cars on both sides, like they do in the city where they're so close to each other, and there is a residential community. Hello, residential buildings are there along each side of the street. And you going down the street, you're not supposed to be going at 40, 50 miles per hour. How can you imagine taking your car down a residential block at 40 or 50 miles per hour? It's ridiculous. You can't even see if a little child is going in between a car to chase a ball that went out into the street. You can't see that. And you won't be able to stop the car in time. Again, stupid. See, because if you were intelligent, you don't need the sign. It just makes sense. You stupid, there's houses here. If there's houses, duh, there's kids. If there's kids, duh, there's a ball bouncing out into the street, you idiot. I'm sorry I have to say it, but I know kids have been hit by cars. I know it. We all know it. It's just dumb. So, there are reasons. You have to look at the situation and realize, wait a minute, I have to go slow here, so I can see if that little kid all of a sudden pops out from nowhere. So again, laws were not made for intelligent people. Laws were made for the stupid. Okay, I'll repeat that, for the stupid. Laws were made for you. Okay, because you don't pay attention. And on top of that, you don't look and reason well. That's why the laws were. I've never worried about laws. I've never, ever. And I've never been arrested. I've never been arrested. Because I know how to live. I reason, I think before I do something. But people who get in trouble with the law is because they do not. They live crazily. They're told what you're not supposed to do, and you're not supposed to do it because you know what's happening, right? But you still do it because you don't have a brain to think with, or a brain to regulate yourself. You're not enforcing self-regulation. You're unable to, have no skill. You don't have the power. So because of that, we have laws. And eventually the laws take those type of people and put them in jail. That's what happens. So those people go in, and it's a business out there, folks. Let's face it. It's a business. Jails are a business. And it's a pretty good business. There's always people in jail. I've never heard any one time where the jails emptied out. Why aren't the jails empty by now? You would think, right? With the laws have been in place for so many years, you would think that there would be jails that are closing due to non-usage. But no, they keep building new jails. And it's a big business. Right? So are we really trying to educate people? Or are we just trying to let the system go and do what it does, right? So it comes to be, you need to think about what's going on and what's allowed and what isn't allowed, all these type of things. Because a lot of these things are made just to keep things going. Keep the motors going, keep the engine moving, right? And keep the prisons full. And keep the traffic coming in and through them and all of that. You got to look at stuff like that. Okay, so here, okay, so it gives a 90% advancement from the emerging awareness of how I learn to full mastery of self-regulation, reflection, and strategy. 90%. So that's what we're talking about. Now, social and emotional development. First grader is external. What the motivation comes from. Where is the motivation derived from? The motivation is derived externally. The teacher provides praise and gives grades. The grades are both praise, but they're also negative. Like when you get a D on your report card. That's supposed to be a negative indication, and it's supposed to be like a negative motivation for you to focus on what you're doing. Okay, this is not just for your parents to see. It's for you to realize that what you're doing in school is not appropriate, so that you should make your own improvement. And that's the expectation. I guess a lot of kids, they go to school and they think that the school is supposed to teach them that you get a D. Do you understand? Yeah, the child looks at it and says, that the school is failing me because they're supposed to teach me, right? So, but what the child and everyone needs to understand is the school provides education, but the learning has to be done by the student. So the student is supposed to learn, and parents at home are supposed to help their children to learn how to learn. You're supposed to help support your child for learning so that they know how to learn. And one of the things I've always taught is that it's called preparing. Preparing. See, I know English. I know how to say preparing. But I'm breaking it apart so that you guys realize what that means. The word has a meaning. Pre meaning before you go to school, you have to pare. What does pear mean? It's not the fruit. P-A-R, par. You may see that word and hear it in other themes, in other topics. But par, P-A-R, means equal. Okay, I had to give further basic instruction. Now, par means equal. So if you pre-par for school the next day, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to school to learn new things? Or are you going to school knowing the new thing? Because you are equal, you prepared. You're equal, pre-equal to the next day of learning in school. I always refer to my childhood school friend, Ralph Kwan. God bless you if you see this or hear this or someone knows you. Hope everything is well for you. It should be, because you are bright. You bright as can be, boy. Bright as light in that area in Queens. But anyway, Ralph, he would tell me what he did to prepare. He always aced his test, always. And he told me, well, what he does, and always he was the top of the line student. He knew the answers. As a matter of fact, in the math class, he would write. You know how we all write? The teacher taught us eventually, and eventually we learned to write everything the teacher's writing on the board. So we were busy doing that. In math, Ralph was the only kid who used a pen. Do you realize that? A pen. So that means he could not erase. That's what that means. He was the only kid not erasing in the class. And why was he able to do this? Because he had prepared. He always knew. He knew the math before he got to class. And what did he do in the class while everyone else was struggling to learn? He was practicing. That's it. So basically, you see, people are not understanding what is supposed to be done. Even with Torah, they are not understanding. I can prove it. We won't get there yet. But you're not understanding, because the Torah and the scriptures are teaching certain things that people are not getting. You're not getting it because you're confusing things with religious gobbledygook, as I always say, the man's teaching, religious thinking. And you're missing all of the wonderful instruction that God has placed in there. Okay, so basically, we're supposed to prepare for the next day of school. Your student, your child needs to prepare. They shouldn't go to school to learn. They should go to school to practice what they know. Because, of course, they prepared the night before. And this is how you get an A. If you're going to school to learn a new thing that next day, you're already behind. Already behind. And when that happens another day, and the third day, and the fourth day, you already lost a week. And that compounds week after week in school. That is what's happening. And that's why they start hating math, they start hating this or that, they start failing in this and that subject. And teachers try to make it easy. And really, it's not a good thing, because society suffers at the end of the day. What needs to be happening... Okay, sorry about that, folks. Again, we have to understand that the school, the educational quality in schools and with certain families are not up to par. But we have to get to that level. And if you want your child to succeed in life, they really need to learn that. They really need to be prepared for school, not go to school just to have an accidental learning experience. I think that's basically, it's like playing lotto, right? It says by accident. And they think that going to school and learning something is an accident. That's basically what's going on. Okay, let's go on. Now, I think people do that with their religion. Maybe that's why. They think they're going to go to heaven by accident. Okay. Now, for doctoral levels, our motivation is internal. We self-motivate ourselves. And we have, of course, our own curiosity. And we want to make a contribution to the field or to the world globally, right? We want to make a contribution to society. That's what becomes a person who knows something. When you know something, you start contributing to society. That's the motivation. So we become less self-centered. A child, an infant, is totally self-centered. That's why they lay in bed, they can't get out. And they cry all day because they want this, they want that, they want attention, they need this, they need that, they're hungry, they're thirsty, and everything is me. Continue the me, and me, and me. As adults, you are infantile. You have to realize that. Somebody has to tell you to your face. It has to be, as an adult, we need to be you, and you, and the other. Never me. Because it's that issue that creates all the troubles there are in society. In the mix going me. Infantile. Okay. So that is what's going on. So when we get to that level, it's 80% advancement. 80%. Which is great. 80% is really a benchmark. That you want to, the 80-20 rule. So you need to at least get to 80%. 80% is very good. The 90 and 95% are exceptional. Really exceptional. Okay. How about communication? Let's go here. In communication, in first grade, you are developed to be basic oral communication and written skills. Remember what communication is. A lot of people don't understand what communication is. Communication is common union. It's two words together. Common union. Communi. And that's what that means. When we have communication, you can only have communication when there's common unity between the people who are exchanging in this scenario, discourse. There has to be union. Everybody can't listen to these teachings because simply there's no common union between this source and the audience, potential audiences out there. There's great disparity in their ability to have commonality with me. So that's understood. I'm also not going to be teaching first grade. It's one of the reasons I chose never to teach elementary school or the primary schools either, because I'm not interested in that, in having common unity with the younger crowd. I find that younger crowd boisterous and not really looking to learn. They're not really looking to learn at all, right? They're looking to have an accident called learning, and a lot of them know enough not to go there. So I preferred the college level and beyond, the higher levels, because at least there's some students there that are interested in self-improvement. So that was my reasoning for that. So, but again, and communication is not that you talk. It's another thing that the child always is vocalizing, meaning that everything is there talking, making speech, making noise, or making words, and that is their expression. And there's no real intent in communicating. Communicating is talking and listening and knowing when to do each. There's a time talking, like I'm doing, is my time for talk. It's everyone else's time for listening. And there's other times where then it's your turn to speak and I listen, which is every other day and every other hour of the week. But this is my time for talking. And so this is then everyone else's time for listening. And again, there has to be common unity. And this is why I have to stop every once in a while, because the children really don't understand the level at which I'm communicating. So that's understandable. We understand that, but I'm also teaching them to at least sit still for a while longer than they're normally used to, and also teaching them to be quiet for a longer period of time than they usually have to be. But all of them need that. We all do need to begin to learn when to listen and when to talk, right? So there's a time for everything under the sun. Good. So, and then we have for the doctoral level, we have the so we have at the doctoral level, we have advanced academic writing and persuasive presentations just like this. And this is the doctoral level, where we are actually engaged in persuasive presentation. And we bring evidence and we bring charts. And like here, we're using AI to give, and we help shape the AI so that it is presenting credible, verifiable information. Right? So you just saw what we did here. And so you see that the product that we elicited from the AI is is good quality. It is not, silliness. This is good quality work product from the AI. And as I mentioned, we're using Copilot, and it says there that it's using Chat GPT. I am number 5 apparently to bring out garbage. But again, as you can see, I think we all can agree that what was put in was very good, and what's coming out is wonderful. So here we go. Now the next thing is, and just look at it in terms of communication. I gave it a good structure to frame its thoughts within. So I was able to communicate, right, at my level to AI, and was able to reciprocate, right, what I elicited. So what it shows you, that if you're able to qualify and quantify what you're asking for, you give it the structure, then the AI is able to communicate. So basically, that's what happens. If you fail in providing the right prompting, as it's called, and it's not just asking the right question, or the question that you want to answer. Remember that. What did I do? I've still not gone into the question, have I? I haven't. I'm setting up the AI to be thinking mathematically and structurally. So and that's what we're doing here. It's part of the teaching today, but it isn't the question that I want to ask, is it? It isn't yet. But I'm showing you how to make sure and to qualify the AI before you ask it the big question, right? So you just don't go into AI and expect it to answer the question and expect anything credible to come out of it. You have to be careful. So let's go back here. Resilience. Resilience is at the first grade level is learning from mistakes. Hello. Some of these things are hilarious because you have adults that are still at the first grade level. You still have to learn from mistakes because you haven't learned from people, from instructors, from mentors, even from your own research or going to the library and figure, even YouTube now and internet. You're not learning. You're not self-learning. So, of course, you still have to learn by mistake, hitting your head on the wall. Duh. Why? Because you didn't look. You're going too fast. Slow down. Learning from mistakes. And it's a terrible thing for an adult to be having to learn from mistakes. Or I should say, if you're an adult and you're still making mistakes, then you're not learning from mistakes. You're just making mistakes because you're unable to learn. You haven't trained yourself. You haven't learned how to learn. It's still your basic lesson in life. How do I learn? So in the doctoral level, we're managing research setbacks to research. Just the other day, I had a setback on one of my software pieces, titles, and I've been working on that for the past month. It's a major setback. And I've been going in and examining this and testing this part and that one. And that. It's a complex code at this juncture, right? But that's the level that I'm at. Somebody else would just throw in the towel. But I've been hitting that, and I have other titles that I'm working. All of that I've stopped. I've stopped development on my other titles and my other projects almost completely until I get that software to the place that it needs to be. And so I've been focused, and for hours, up till 3 in the morning, testing and retesting and recalibrating and changing this code for another and testing this and that and making tests to see where the flow is going, what's happening, how is it doing this, how is it handling this math, and verifying a lot of things. I've even had to change the way I'm doing the tests and isolating tests to really focus in or find the problem part, the part that's failing. Looking at files, looking at archives, this is back and forth. It's been a complex process. So that again is, and then look at what does it say here? Look at it. It's just, again, you guys see it. I did this on the fly. I didn't prepare this. Long-term persistence. Long-term persistence. Just the way that I'm manifesting in the work that I'm doing. Long-term persistence. We stick to it until it gets done. Okay? We don't just quit. Oh, I can't. And we see here, just in this home, we see how, some kids that have autism, they just can't do anything, so, and at one end, they don't even try. They say, I'm stuck. Excuse me. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at the basic minimal existence that a child may have, and comparing that to other children who don't suffer from that problem, and seeing where is their level of I quit, I can't do it, I'm stuck. And oftentimes I point out that you see this other child, and you are very close to where that other child gives up. But his scenario is much more limited than yours. But what I find is that people in life, and they become later on adults, they quit too early. You don't achieve because you quit. You still can't read because you quit trying to master it. You can't do math because you quit trying to master it. And the same thing will happen in your life. With problems in life, you quit too early. You don't want to try to master it. And that is what happens. You get into this habit of not trying hard enough, not persisting. And you see that the AI says that persistence is the doctoral level of capacity. Okay? So that's what's needed. When you have a brain, you persist. You're going to fix this. It's going to work. And that's what we need for man to get a cure for cancer, for goodness sake. You have to persist. To help yourself, you have to persist. And this shows an 85% advancement. Now it gets into the hypothetical percentile model. If first grade equals 0% baseline, here comes the math, right? Then doctoral studies represent the culmination of 85 around that little squiggly line. Squiggly line means it's around approximately 85 to 95% development of those same foundational elements, which basically means getting towards 100 times development. And that's important. It's important because it's not 10 times. Now, those of you who know Bible and other things like numerology and math, you know the significance of 10% and the relationship of 10% with the whole thing, 100%. What is the relationship between 10% and 100%? What the AI is pointing out, that we're not talking about 10% levels here. We're talking 1%. So you can imagine what 1% is, what 1% means and represents. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here. Not even 10%. Okay, so that 1% is what it is. In compare first grade, 1% to the doctoral level, which represents almost 100%, 100 times more developed than the basic, okay, which is at 1%. That's strikingly okay. So 1% to 100% is vastly. And now you think about how different does it look, which is what you should be thinking. You should have been thinking all along as we're doing this class. How different does it look? The thing, whatever the basic element is, how different does it look from 1 to 100 times progressed, evolved? 100% evolved? Do you understand what that means? I'm going to ask the AI, what does that mean? Is it different or is it the same? You know what's going to be the answer, right? Do you need to have the AI tell that for you? Okay, so again, this is something, this teaching today is for people to show other people, religion and religious fields and other things, who think that a basic instruction should be the same or should be the focus at 100% development, or to say learning from it. That it doesn't, what you're doing doesn't look like 1%. Yeah, I'm not in first grade anymore. Is it supposed to look the same? I'm not in first grade any longer. Am I supposed to act the same as a first grader? I hope not. Am I supposed to be memorizing things as I once had to do when I was in first grade? I hope not. Right? Because that wouldn't be progress. It would be being static. Or as the autistic child that we take care of here says, stuck. Even he knows. The word is stuck. That's what you would be. Stuck. Okay, so literacy towards academic publishing is 95%. Numeracy, advanced statistics, and modeling, 90%. From curiosity, we have independent research, 85%. And from collaboration, we have global scholarly networks at a 90% evolution state. So the key insight is that doctoral education isn't a different species of learning. It's the mature flowering of the same seeds planted in the first grade. The act of reading a simple story evolves into analyzing dense theoretical texts. Solving arithmetic problems evolves into modeling complex systems. Asking why evolves into defending a dissertation. See? So that is a big difference. That is a big difference. And so now we're getting closer to the fight of basic instructions and what would be if they're instructions, what would be the 90 to 95% or even 80 to 90% development from that instruction. That's what we're going to put through AI. So this is why I say that this already, anybody who has this notion that, that the intention of God was that the basic instruction just be what it is for all of human time is not really understanding. Now, it doesn't mean, because God did say you and your generations will do this, okay? But then you have to start realizing, well, wait a minute. Why is God telling us to continually do this? And when you take the rest of the scripture in consideration, even Exodus 19 by itself tells you why, except that people don't understand what holy means. Now, we have the series on the true meaning of holy. So you guys can run over there and watch that. But if you did, you know already what holy means. So you understand that in Exodus 19, you're already now understanding that Exodus 19 lays it out straight out in the open. And it makes sense of everything that's related to Torah. Okay? When you have the right definition, which seems to be a problem for this human race. Anyway, let's go back in. And we see that we are going to now ask, there's a question that we wanted to see here. It's a mature flowering. Okay. So, let's go into the next question, which is the obvious second step. Now, let us take elements of Toraric So now we'll ask the AI to take the elements of Torah teaching in the Torah. I'm just going to let it pick. The first thing. So now can that is related to teaching, and that's called education. I'm going to say instruction. I'm going to put instruction. Analyzed in similar fashion to what was done above. And we'll just ask it. It's like a trick question, right? We're going to entrap the AI. Now it says absolutely teaching and instruction themselves can be analyzed in the same evolutionary framework as we did with student learning. Just as first grade learning goals evolved into doctoral level scholarship, the methods of teaching and instruction also undergo a transformation from simple structured guidance to highly complex, individualized mentorship. Does mentorship ring a bell to anybody out there? Because not the Old Testament, not the Torah, but the New Testament uses a word that means mentorship. You know what it's called? Discipleship. So the New Testament, the early church uses mentorship, while the Toraric tradition uses memorization. Okay, I'm telling you this, and remember the Torah does say they have to remember these things. Remember Shabbat, right? So it uses the remembering and remember very, very clearly, very saliently in the Old Testament. So let's ask the AI something right now before we get to the final countdown. Now, are there elements related to Torah that imply or that not imply, but I'm not typing in here, one moment. Are there elements of Torah that are closely associated with levels we examined above? And that's an open question, but why not? We'll ask it. So this is what the AI says. Yes, the Torah can be meaningfully mapped onto the same developmental framework of education we've been exploring. Jewish tradition often treats Torah study as a lifelong journey, beginning with simple foundations, like first grade learning, and culminating in advanced mastery, similar to doctoral level scholarship. Let's examine how Torah aligns with those strategies. Torah and educational levels, foundational learning, the Aleph, Bet, and Chumash, the Pentateuch basics. Children begin by learning. So now it's going to go into how they use it, right? But that's not what I wanted it to do, because we can use anything using it. Now, in the Mishnah and Talmud, all the students, so they have commentary, right? It's not just the law. Goals, understanding halachic categories, reasoning through disputes, and beginning critical thinking. Instruction style, shavrut, paired study, teach explanation, structured debates, and developmental percentile is 40 to 60%, moving from memorization to reasoning. So you see there that quite a difference, right, in the advancement at this level, 40 to 60%. Advanced study, parallel to graduate studies, deep Talmudic analysis and commentaries. Again, it's not the Torah right now, right? It's not talking about Torah. It's talking about the commentaries, the things that the scholars are discussing and talking about. It's not the Torah itself. Okay, so you have to understand that. And the goals are analytical skills, synthesis of multiple sources, applying principles to new cases. Instruction style is seminar-like discussions, independent research, guided mentorship. Okay, but even then, I'm seeing where there's issues arising. This shows the being stuckness, if you understand what I'm trying to say. There was none of this in the examination we did before. Do you see already a difference in the quality of what we're seeing now to the first examination? The first examination was free. It was simple, basic to doctoral level, and there's no, midway points or anything. It was just simple extrapolation through everything. Here, though, while it's treating how the Torah believers and practitioners deal with Torah, now we're seeing a little bit of a what you call some hesitation. I'm just calling it like that. There's a difference. There's some structuring going on with the way they are dealing with Torah, right? So it's the way I interpreted it is that they are forcing the higher treatment on something that is stagnant. Because remember, the Torah isn't moving, the commentary. So you see that's what's causing this to happen. Because since it's stuck, then they have to overlay upon a lot of things. But it's not the Torah isn't evolving more complex about it. See? If we would take the same first grade elements and then apply what they're doing to the first, it would be quite different. We don't have the time to do that. But I note to myself or to all you out there, you can do this on your own. You first do the examination and then make it do a first grade elements and teaching, and to apply what they do with the Torah to it. It'll be quite interesting to see the difference. You can already tell what it would be. There is a great difference here. It's a problem. Educationally, as an educator, I can see it. It's a great problem here. Right? So let's look. Continue looking. These are the things, All right. So the developmental percentile here is 70 to 80%. Independent thought begins to flourish. Right? It begins here to flourish. But again, it's just thoughts. It's just thoughts. Doctoral level Torah study. Original Torah scholarship, responsa novellae, or new interpretations. Scholars contribute new insights, rulings, or frameworks to the tradition. In other words, to the first grade level. Goals, not just learning but creating, adding to the chain of Torah through original thought. So they're adding to the first grade elements by their thinking, right? Adding to by thoughts and their commentary. This is not what was happening before. That's not what we do in real life in education. We don't do that. We don't philosophize about ABCs, but they do. They're doing that. Instruction style, self-directed research, peer review via rabbinic councils and global scholarly dialogue. So they do have self-directed research. They're researching into Torah, into other matters, etc. Mostly cases, right? And then you go development percentile there is 90 to 100%. That's the flowering of Torah study into innovation. So basically they are extrapolating towards the application of Torah into real life, which is basically what they're doing. But the Torah itself does not evolve, right? The elements of Torah are not evolving. Simply they have to extrapolate at this point. So what are the key parallels? Literacy, just as first grade literacy evolves into doctoral publishing, Torah literacy evolves into the rulings and original commentary. Halakhic rulings and original commentary. Teacher mentor, the Rebbe of a Keda elementary Torah school evolves into the Rosh Yeshiva or Dayan, rabbinic judge guiding advanced scholars. And then the assessment, peer review, from reciting verses correctly to defending a dissertation. Torah study evolves from oral recitation to communal validation of new rulings. Okay? So basically, that is what it is. But it's preserving what? The first grade. So that we have to always understand that this is why that is happening. They're evolving from that. Now compare direct Torah instructions and how the direct Torah instruction, and I'm going to put in parentheses, take a sample of 3 to 5, and evolve them directly, not as people would, not as people, I have to be careful here, not as people would, no. Evolve them directly as the first grade elements were in our first case, and produce possible doctoral mastery versions. Evolved versions. Case study. So that is what we're going to ask it to do. This is the final thing for today's lesson. So let's go and let's see what happens. Perfect. Let's take direct Torah instruction and mitzvot as our first grade elements and then extrapolate how they could evolve into doctoral level mastery in the same way we did with secular education. We'll treat each mitzvah as a seed that grows from simple practice into advanced intellectual, ethical, and spiritual mastery. This is again the AI. I didn't ask it to do those things, but it's still going to do it. Sample Torah instruction and evolution. Honor your father and mother. Exodus 20:12. First grade level, child learns to say please and thank you. Obey parents, show respect. Instruction is concrete and behavioral. Okay, so again, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, what we are hoping that it did. It completely abandoned the structure of the first case, because the structure of the first case, we didn't go into what the child learns to say in response to A, B, C, D. It didn't do that. So here is where you see that the AI is doing something that was not part of the first case, not even what I asked for. It was not part of the first case. Okay? So here's an example. This, it will do it to you. It will do this oftentimes. Okay? Because it's not able to think abstractly. That's what's happening. Okay, let's go on. So we won't even bother with that. It's obviously what the other things it says is what adults do with it all the time, which is not it's not the Torah itself evolving. Evolutionary development from the simple obedience to nuanced ethical frameworks is 95% though. So all right, so that represents 95%. We'll give it what it says. It says, you shall not steal, 2015. First grade level, child learns not to take toys or belongings without permission. Instruction is moral, storytelling. Stealing hurts others. Doctoral level mastery, advanced halakhic analysis of theft, fraud, intellectual property, and money financial systems. All right. Again, this is, what is the problem here? We see it here. We see it here. It is doing this, abandoning the first case. See, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to not continue with this. I'm going to force it to do what we wanted it to do, which is to just examine the elements, not what people do with them. But in secular education and your first analysis, doctoral level mastery mastery does not base itself, well, it's not what people do with ABC basic instruction. So I'm going to just ask that question to it. You're exactly right. This is a subtle but important distinction. That's right. In secular education, doctoral level mastery is not simply a more complex version of ABCs or of arithmetic drills. Instead, it represents a transformation of those basics into entirely new domains and practice. So I don't need it to unpack it. I know it. Simply, then treat Torahric elements in the same way. And I'm going to represent a transformation, right? And I'm going to copy what it says here and feed it back to it so they understand. Hey, you know you're not doing it right because you even said so. So now, exactly, let's now treat Torahric elements in the same way we treat it. And this is the reason I tell you all, yes, this is the main problem with AI. If you do not know what you're supposed to know, AI will take you into never confirming whatever erroneous idea you have land. So you have to understand what it is we're talking about and remind, because the AI, even though it knows, or it had it in its graphs a moment ago, we see that it completely left it. It completely left it, abandoned the essence of what we were talking about. So I'm forcing it to deal with the element. I already gave you the math. You already dealt with math, so stay there. ABCs in first grade. We were talking about the evolving educational elements. And this is the question at hand, not how people deal with it. Okay, so here we go. Now let's let the AI explain itself, and this will be the end. So get your pencils and paper ready. Exactly. Let's now treat Torahric elements in the same way we treated secular education. Okay, now, instead, Torahric basics are entry points that evolve into frameworks for advanced interpretation, application, and innovation. Okay, Shabbat. Oh, it chose a good one. See, I didn't want to choose the ones it chose. I wanted it to come up with its own choices. This is a very good choice. Shabbat, Exodus 28. Basic level, child and beginner. Lighting candles, not writing homework, enjoying festive meals. Okay, now it's still going to do the same thing. Holy cow. Focus, ritual participation, and simple obedience. So it says here, advanced halakhic analysis of the 39 melachot, categories of prohibited work. So again, it's not doing what we said, right? It's still not doing it. Philosophical exploration of sacred time. Now that is something. That is okay. Human dignity and rest in modern society is philosophical. So basically saying philosophy, exploration of philosophical use of the recognition of, or the thought that there's such a thing as called as sacred time. Okay, so original scholarship on how Shabbat principles apply to technology is also and it says basically not keeping Shabbat harder, but transforming Shabbat into a lens for global ethics and law. Maintaining the first grade elements and just dealing with how people relate to them, but doctoral level treatment of first grade elements was never our consideration above. Simply take and hypothesize how its direct evolution to the same degree as in secular education, its evolution how its direct evolution to the same degree as in seculation looks like without reference to the ABCs of basic education. So hopefully that'll make it work the right way. Got it. Thank you for clarifying. You're asking me to treat Torah instructions themselves as the base units and then hypothesize their direct evolution into doctoral level mastery. In the same way secular education evolves from basic literacy numeracy into advanced scholarship. No reference to first grade basics, just Torah mitzvot evolving into higher order intellectual spiritual frameworks. Now, it sounds good, but let's see if it actually does it. Shabbat, direct instruction, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Doctoral level evolution, Shabbat becomes a comprehensive system of time philosophy, exploring the metaphysics. Metaphysics is that it's above the created things, of sacred versus profane time. Now that takes us into reality. In other words, it's hinting towards what the real meaning of Shabbat is. See, you don't get to this if everyone is just reacting to the instruction. They're preserving the instruction. And again, I don't mean to say that they're not supposed to. They're ordered to do so. God commanded that it be done. I'm just pointing out what happens when you do what God said with Torah. And it's important that we know this for the reason I'm going to throw out at the end. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's keep going here because people don't understand what's happening. Advanced halakhic discourse on technology, automation, and labor in global economy. Original scholarship situating Shabbat as a universal model for human rights, rest, and ecological sustainability. So they're saying that the Shabbat becomes a model apply to different areas of human ills, of human situations, human rights. It says rest because, of course, the Shabbat has to do with stopping. But remember, it doesn't know that, right? The AI doesn't realize that when the Bible says rest, that it means stop. And it doesn't realize that the word Shabbat itself means stop. In English, to say rest, like I'm resting, but literally the word means stop. That's why you're resting, because you stopped. And in the Old English also, because we get the word rest really from the Old English translation for those verses that have it. And that's why we call it the day of rest. But remember that in Old English, they used to use rest just like stop. And the car came to a rest at the bottom of the hill. That's the way it was used. Rest is not meaning that the car was resting, taking a break and drinking some iced tea. It means that the car stopped. That's what it means. The plane came to rest at the end of the tarmac. Again, it's not laying on a hammock and drinking some ice cold tea. It stopped. Shabbat means stop. That's what it means. Okay, so stop with the rest, because then all the dumb people out there get the wrong idea that this is like relaxing. You gotta rest because we have to rest. That's not what the Bible's talking about. It's not talking about relaxing. It's talking about stopping. Some things were stopped. A lot of things, in fact. Because if you look at Genesis, what was stopped? Everything. Because God stopped creating so that everything before had to stop. So the Shabbat has to do with the time in which all else is no longer something. And it exists by itself. The Shabbat is a different thing. Very important. But you wouldn't get to that if you're just like in the first grade with it, right? So this is what I want you guys to understand. You need to see it for yourself. Now, the evolution is from a weekly ritual to a doctoral level framework for time, dignity, and sustainability. Fine. Distinguishing pure and impure animals. Doctoral level evolution. Kashrut becomes a system of ethical consumption. Addressing biotechnology, factory farming, and global food justice. Again, it's still staying within that framework. It's okay. But understand what is coming from. Comparative theology of purity and holiness across cultures. Again, with the proper understanding of the true meaning of holiness, yes. Okay, absolutely. And the original contributions to environmental ethics, sustainability, and bioethics, again, evolution from food rules, it becomes a doctoral level discourse on ethics of eating and global responsibility. And even there, it falls short because it's still preserving the instruction. You see how it still wants to do that? So this is equivalent to, and when we did the first test, you can go back in the video and look at it again, that it said with the doctor level knows how to use his ABCs. And he uses ABCs in his doctoral dissertation. That's what it's saying here, which I told it not to do because you're doing something that we didn't do in the first case. And it's still devolving back into it. because, and this is the reason, because it has a knowledge that Torah is supposed to stay the way it is. That's why it's having this conflict, right? But again, it doesn't have the understanding that Exodus 19 gives anyone with understanding. Okay, so it's really supposed to just use it and extrapolate, not consider how the doctor now relates to the basic instruction, which is something that wasn't done in the primary case that we use. So again, you see, even here, the struggle for us to get AI to do what we ask. It's a simple exercise. Okay, Sadaka, Deuteronomy 15:78, direct instruction, obligation to support the poor. Again, it's picking things that, of course, are what they are. Even as it is, it wasn't that much of a basic stretch. It is pretty much clear. Okay, then it has prayer. It's not a good one to use as an example here. Honoring parents, of course, there's honoring parents. All right, so again, it didn't do a good job here. It did some. It dealt with the Sabbath more interestingly than with the others. Okay, so for the matter of time, I won't continue on this because I know the AI can be frustrating to deal with. What did I want to have the AI to do, which it failed at doing? Just simply do what it did with the secular first grade elements. No one in the doctoral level, unless they're dealing with how to make a better first grade experience, is dealing with first grade elements at all. They're dealing with, of course, evolved education from the writing and from reading, run, Dick, run, see, Susan, run. And they're dealing from that and already now reading, heavy-duty works of literature and scientific tomes, right? But again, what the element is changed. And that's the thing that it wasn't doing. I could put another test releasing it from Torah, but I don't want to do it because I want this to be seen for what it was. When you're stuck with Torah as being an unmovable command, then you're stuck in terms of the ability to develop understanding from it. You have some, but you're stuck because, again, the performance issue, the obeisance. And it was purposeful that way. Now, when the Gentile deals with Torah, he's not subject to the obeisance restriction. That even though he may follow, he's not under the obligation. Any Jew will tell you he's not under the obligation. So it's not obligatory. And if he's not obligatory, and because of that, which is what I wanted the AI to do, was to not be obliged to preserve the Torahric instruction as something people had to deal with once they evolve, and it evolves with them towards a more deeper realization, more evolved, which it didn't want to do. It doesn't have a want or desire. It just simply didn't do it. But I know it can do it. It can extrapolate. But we've run out of time on this lesson, so it's already 2.5 hours. So it's going to have to wait for a future treatment on this. But you see that what happens. This is the reason. Now, why would I want it to change Torah, to have it evolve? Just like your first grade elements evolve to greater and deeper applications. It didn't do that, right? It just had people reacting to it or people commenting about it, because that's what they're doing out there. The AI is telling us how people are dealing with it out there, but it's not the same. It's not the same as how we deal with and consume secular education. Our math and our sciences, our reading. It's not the same. It's different. Now the difference is due to the command that God gave to who? To Israel. So basically, now, the first thing though is that at least we have some recognition that the basic Torahtic instructions are by themselves elementary. That is proof the religious groups and the world deals with Torah is that it is an elementary instruction. Because even if it wasn't, there will be no need for commentary and the other. You would only have what it is because it is the sublime understanding, but it isn't. It is recognizably so, and admittedly a basic instruction. So why did God? And it's only it's preserved so because God commanded it to be so preserved by the children of Israel. It's very clear. Very clear. So, but we also saw in the AI today how the preservation of something of this type, of a basic instruction, how its preservation creates a resistance. It creates friction. I'm trying to find the right word. It creates friction towards evolving understanding and education, because we're stuck in a reactionary stance to it instead of using it to evolve with it. So that is the problem. The secular education, we use it to evolve, to grow and develop. But with the Torah, as we've seen here and we see with the Torahtic religious believers, their practice, and by the divine command, they preserve it. And so they can only react to it. Now, there's a lot of people out there that tell us all, everyone has to follow Torah. Everyone has to obey the Ten Commandments. Did specify to whom he gave the Ten Commandments to. And once you realize that, who would have to, and I mentioned it a little bit while, but first grade stuff. Who would be actively researching it, memorizing it at the doctoral level or even the master's degree level in the basic first grade stuff? Because there is an adult that does that. There's a whole group in society that dedicates itself to doing that. You know who they are? Elementary school teachers. They have degrees, and they go to school to learn the first grade stuff again, but how to teach it now to other first graders. So that's and that's reasonable. It is intelligent. It is good. So you have to. So when God tells the children of Israel that you need to remember this and practice this and do this for all your generations, he is telling them that you are going to be the kingdom of priests and an holy nation. Priests did a function in the old days. They were the only ones who were educated in the community. And that is closely related to the true meaning of the word holy. And so that's what we have to realize. But the world, as all the Eretz is mine, is not all going to stay at first grade. That's the thing that you guys got to realize. But first grade was needed. I already showed how the failure of Israel to do what God had instructed them to do, commanded them to do, brought about atheism. I already proven that. I did a study, an analysis. Israel was supposed to be there at the right time in the right place to impact all of the world's educational system, all of the world's civilizational development, all of it. They were at the crux of the time to impact all the nations of the world. And they dropped the ball. And that is what happened in society. And the rest is history. And what happens afterwards, and obviously with Jesus Christ coming in, the New Testament is an advancement of Torah that was originally supposed to be brought in by Israel. But of course they dropped the ball. And what we're showing here, and I will show in the future, that the evolution of these things, much like the Shabbat, is more than just keeping the Shabbat, especially for the Gentiles. Because the Jew, the child of Israel, has to keep the Shabbat. You have to. Because you have to be the first grade teacher. That's why. Because you have to be, and you're teaching by what? You are the teaching element itself. It's not the thing to teach. You are the element. Yourselves. As a people. Okay, sorry about it. I had other lessons. I'm teaching here 4 or 5 lessons at the same time. Okay, so we're going to look at it, and our next time that we're together, this is the last teaching of the year, of this year, yes. This is winter time. I take the December off, and I get back on maybe February, maybe, or March, for sure we'll be on. And I don't know where we'll be starting in terms of topics, but the AI thing will be a continued section. Even if I don't do it on a Sunday, I'll do it as another recording series and keep it examining different things using AI. I will revisit the Torah elements, and I'm going to do it individually so that the AI doesn't have to burn a fuse. And then we will revisit this issue, this very precise issue. Because the hypothesis here is that Christianity, being a true child of God today, is an evolved an evolution of Torahtic instruction. And the reason that you don't see Gentiles keeping the Sabbath or doing the things that God commanded as Christian, and so you question the Christian church or the Christian practice, the Christian religion, you question the lifestyle, better said, the Christian lifestyle as not being in compliance. And many Adventists also believe this, or they observe this. You have to understand percent of that first grade element, that the Christian lifestyle of the Gentile Christian church is at 90 and 95%. It evolved from that. I laugh because when I say these points that are so drastically vital and impacting, the connection gets lost. It just never fails. It's been good for a long time, and then it fails when I say things like the Christian believer is at 95% from the 1% the lawkeeper is at. I got it in. Okay, it's like a game, trying to get it in before we lose connection. So basically, yes, you have to come to this realization. So does it look different the way I please God? Is it going to look differently than how you please God? It's going to look differently, up to 90-95% different. And, if you got vanilla cake, you have vanilla cake, and 95% of mine is chocolate, it's not going to look the same, folks. It's not going to look the same. So that's the problem, that a lot of the Hebrew this and that and whoever, the ones who want to keep the law, they criticize the Christian because I don't see you doing this. I don't see you doing that. It's going to look different, which is the same thing that happened with Jesus and the Pharisees. Jesus looks real different than you Pharisees. I'm not quoting you Pharisees, I'm quoting those guys then, the Pharisees then. What were the Pharisees worried about? They saw the big difference. This is not what we're teaching. This is an abandonment of, making sure that we're following the law. 95%. It's an evolution of understanding. It's not going to look the same. But the only person that determines who is faithful to God is God himself. Now, you may be unsure about what God wants you to do. You may be. But there's so many clues, so many hints of what came first, the first things, like first grade. This is what I'm saying, that people are not using their reasoning skills. These are first things. These were first basic stuff. Why can't you reason from that? Reason. And the reason a lot of people don't do it is because they get mixed up with religious baggage, a lot of religious explanations, and so you get wrapped up in the religion, and they don't let you think things through. You're attracted to the religious practice, to the traditions, to the garb, the verbiage, the culture. But when we're searching for truth and we want to base ourselves on truth, you gritty. Forget all that other stuff. Unless all you're looking for is religion. Then you need that truth. Everyone. I mean, not in September. See you in February or March. New year, next year. Take care. See you then. Bye-bye.